You believe that to be liked is safety. You have been taught that gentleness wins hearts, that patience earns loyalty, that to be agreeable is to be good. Yet look closely. Those who are adored are also those most easily dismissed, replaced, forgotten. The world pretends to reward kindness, but it kneels only before strength. In every social room, in every office, in every family, the one who bends the least rules the most. That is the truth polite society hides. Because the cult of being liked is the cage that keeps you docile, it teaches you to soften your edges until you no longer cut through anything at all. The hunger to be liked is not innocent. It is a transaction, and you pay for it with pieces of yourself. Each time you suppress anger to appear composed, each time you swallow truth to preserve harmony, each time you tolerate disrespect for the sake of peace, you donate power. The Machiavellian mind sees this for what it is, a silent surrender disguised as virtue. Niccolò Machiavelli did not study princes and tyrants to glorify cruelty. He studied them to expose the mechanics of survival. And his verdict was simple. He who seeks love before respect will end in neither. Most people cannot bear this sentence. They flinch at the idea that love without fear collapses. But Machiavelli was not writing for most people. He was writing for those who would see the world as it is, not as morality paints it. The world is a theater of masks. To walk it barefaced is not purity, it is negligence. The man who tries to please all must betray himself to someone. In his effort to offend none, he offends his own dignity first. You have seen it. The agreeable colleague who absorbs everyone's workload, hoping generosity will buy protection, only to be discarded when convenient. The friend who avoids confrontation until resentment poisons every word unspoken. The partner who forgives endlessly, believing endurance is proof of love until love itself turns into quiet contempt. The Machiavellian eye watches these scenes without pity. He knows the dynamic, where one kneels, another commands. Machiavelli observed that appearances rule more firmly than substance. Men judge by what they see, not by what they feel, and they fear what they cannot predict. Therefore, to be respected, one must be partially unknowable. The perpetual smile, the endless availability, the eagerness to agree, these are acts of self-betrayal. They teach others that your boundaries are negotiable, your value is conditional, your loyalty can be purchased with crumbs of approval. Respect, on the other hand, is built upon distance. It grows in the silence between your words, in the firmness of your refusal, in the discipline with which you say nothing when provoked. Consider how predators move in the wild. They do not roar to prove dominance. They observe. They wait. They let others reveal weakness through noise. The Machiavellian mind acts the same way. Restraint is not passivity. It is control condensed into stillness. Every time you rush to justify yourself, you bleed influence. Every time you over-explain, you confess dependence on another's opinion. Silence, in contrast, unsettles. It makes others project, question, respect. Machiavelli knew that fear is not always terror. It is the awareness that your reactions cannot be predicted. You may think fear is immoral, that respect earned through uncertainty is manipulation. But what is manipulation, if not the natural language of human ambition? From the moment we learn to speak, we learn to persuade, to mask, to edit the truth. Morality did not erase that instinct. It merely cloaked it in etiquette. You cannot escape the game by denying it. You can only play it consciously. Those who deny it are the ones most controlled by it. When Machiavelli wrote The Prince, he was accused of cynicism. Yet his writings are not dark, they are precise. He did not invent deceit. He recognized its inevitability. And he understood that the only antidote to being deceived is to accept the nature of men. Most will love at convenience and betray at opportunity. Most admire goodness until it obstructs their desire. The wise man does not curse this truth. He uses it. He offers goodwill when it strengthens his position and withdraws it when it weakens it. In a world of shifting loyalties, flexibility is not hypocrisy, it is survival. The tragedy of goodness is that it assumes reciprocity. You imagine that your empathy guarantees understanding, that your fairness ensures fairness returned, but the Machiavellian knows that goodness is a weapon best held, not displayed. Show it too freely, and it will be turned against you. People will test your limits not out of malice, but curiosity. They will want to know how much you can endure before you revolt. And if you never revolt, they will learn that your kindness is infinite, therefore worthless. Think of the ruler who pardons every betrayal in the hope of converting enemies into friends. His mercy invites more rebellion. Each forgiven conspirator becomes proof that disobedience carries no cost. The realm rots from within, and the ruler calls it compassion. Machiavelli warned that cruelty, when well used, is mercy in disguise. One decisive act of firmness prevents years of chaos. The same principle governs personal life. The first time someone disrespects you, they are testing boundaries. The second time, they are confirming your weakness. To end it swiftly is not cruelty, it is clarity. You must understand the arithmetic of power. To be liked costs infinitely more than to be respected. Being liked requires continuous investment, compliments, concessions, apologies. Being respected requires a single demonstration of consequence. When people know that crossing you has weight, they tread carefully. They may not adore you, but they will never forget you. And in the ledger of influence, memory is worth more than affection. There is a cold elegance in this philosophy. It does not seek domination for vanity, but for order. To be feared for injustice is barbaric. To be respected for precision is mastery. The Machiavellian mind does not harm unnecessarily. It restrains strategically. It knows that chaos arises when others perceive weakness, and therefore it keeps weakness hidden. Even compassion, when shown, is measured, deliberate, timed. Imagine a mirror. Every person you meet gazes into it and sees their reflection. Some will admire themselves through your approval, others will despise you for holding the mirror too long. Machiavelli teaches that you are not obliged to hold it forever. When you withdraw reflection, people are forced to see themselves. This is why distance commands respect. It forces self-awareness in others, and those who cannot face themselves will accuse you of arrogance. Let them. To offend the insecure is a service, not a sin. You have been conditioned to equate goodness with innocence, but innocence is blindness, the refusal to see malice until it wounds you. The Machiavellian strives for consciousness, not innocence. He studies the motives behind smiles, the timing of compliments, the rhythm of promises. He learns that people reveal their true nature when they believe you are harmless. That is why harmlessness is a liability. When you appear incapable of retaliation, you invite control. Power does not require cruelty. It requires the credible possibility of it. This is the first transformation, the death of the need to be liked. It feels like an internal rebellion. Because it is, you begin to recognize that most acts of goodness were negotiations for love. Every unspoken plea, every swallowed truth, every act of self-sacrifice was a silent contract. If I am good enough, they will not leave. But Machiavelli dismantles this illusion. He reminds you that loyalty cannot be purchased by virtue, it is purchased by value. And value, in human relations, is established by scarcity. The rarer your approval, the higher its worth. You may fear that this mindset leads to loneliness. It does not. It filters. The ones who remain after you withdraw constant validation are those drawn to your strength, not your compliance. Machiavelli would call this purification, the reduction of false allies. Better a few who fear to disappoint you than a crowd who feels entitled to you. Respect begins where desperation ends. When you stop seeking permission to exist, you stop negotiating your worth. You no longer explain why your standards are high, why your silence is firm, why your presence feels heavy. People sense it. They adjust. The very same ones who once exploited your softness begin to speak carefully. Watch their tone, measure their proximity. You have not changed your words, you have changed your gravity, and gravity is felt, not spoken. This is not a call to cruelty, it is a call to lucidity. The Machiavellian does not despise kindness, he weaponizes it. He knows that mercy is most respected when rare, that generosity is most admired when earned. If you must be kind, let it be a deliberate act, not a reflex. The difference between strategy and submission is intention. When you decide who receives your softness, you remain sovereign. When everyone receives it by default, you become common. Machiavelli once wrote that men sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their inheritance. In this, he revealed the root of human loyalty, self-interest. Accept it, and you free yourself from naivety. People are loyal only while their interests align with yours. When they no longer do, they will rationalize betrayal as necessity. Therefore, build alliances on shared benefit, not affection. Respect built on fear of loss endures longer than love built on emotion. Notice how the powerful behave. They do not chase validation. They create dependence. Every favor they grant is a thread that binds others to them. Every secret they keep becomes a silent chain. They know that gratitude fades, but obligation endures. When you help someone, make sure the help cannot be forgotten. Let it be remembered as costly, irreplaceable. That is not manipulation, it is architecture. You may still wonder, what happens to love in this philosophy? It does not disappear, it matures. Love stripped of illusion becomes respect, adorned with awareness. When you no longer demand to be liked, love, if it comes, is pure, because it is not transactional. It is drawn not to your compliance, but to your composure. It is the love reserved for the immovable, the kind that survives absence, distance, and fear. As this first movement closes, you must grasp one truth. Approval is temporary, but authority is eternal. People's opinions shift like weather. Your control over yourself must not. Machiavelli teaches that to rule others, you must first govern your need for them. When you achieve that, you are no longer a participant in the hierarchy. You become the axis around which it turns. When respect is born, power begins its quiet architecture. But few understand how fragile that architecture truly is. It must be reinforced not through affection or persuasion, but through perception, the delicate illusion of necessity. Machiavelli observed that men are moved less by truth than by appearances. It is not enough to possess strength. One must seem untouchable. The moment you are too available, you lose altitude. Familiarity erodes reverence. Every step closer to someone lowers your throne by an inch. Distance is not cruelty. It is geometry. It defines the height from which others must look up to see you. The Machiavellian mind understands that control is a theater of impressions. To maintain dominance, one must master invisibility and presence simultaneously, appearing when consequence is needed, disappearing when curiosity must grow. Silence and scarcity are the two currencies of command. They force others to fill the void with speculation. And speculation, when well directed, is the most efficient servant of power. The less you explain, the more they invent, and invention often flatters the one they fear to misunderstand. You have seen this dynamic unfold. The leader who speaks rarely, yet whose words resound for weeks. The mentor who corrects with a single glance, whose approval feels like a divine event. These figures do not beg to be understood, they dictate meaning by withholding it. Machiavelli would tell you that men revere what they cannot easily define. Therefore, your ambiguity must become deliberate. Do not declare your intentions too quickly. Do not clarify every silence. Let uncertainty work on your behalf, for it plants in others a careful respect that certainty can never sustain. Control begins where predictability ends. The predictable man is a servant of others' expectations. The Machiavellian, by contrast, builds tension around his choices. He knows that humans confuse restraint with wisdom and mystery with depth. Therefore, when he acts, the world assumes reason even where there is instinct. That is the secret art of authority, to make others rationalize your impulses as strategies. When you appear disciplined, they will justify your cruelty as justice, your absence as contemplation, your ambition as destiny. But respect cannot survive in a vacuum. It requires maintenance, subtle, constant, invisible maintenance. Machiavelli taught that it is safer to be feared than loved, but he also warned that fear must never turn to hatred. The ruler who crosses that line destroys himself. For fear anchors obedience, but hatred fuels rebellion. The wise man therefore calibrates both. He allows others just enough comfort to feel dependent, yet never enough to feel equal. He gives rewards sparingly, praise strategically, and punishment swiftly. Mercy, when offered, must feel intentional, not indulgent. In this balance lies the art of lasting dominance. To govern minds, one must learn the mechanics of desire. Every person you encounter carries a hunger, recognition, validation, access, superiority. If you can identify this hunger faster than they can conceal it, you possess leverage. And leverage, once acquired, must never be wasted on sentiment. The Machiavellian does not feed every appetite. He chooses which ones to starve, to keep a follower loyal, deny them complete satisfaction, to keep an enemy contained, grant them a taste of victory. People remain bound, not to those who give them everything, but to those who keep them wanting more. This principle extends far beyond politics. In relationships, the same psychology applies. When you reveal too much, you kill intrigue. When you offer unconditional access, you extinguish pursuit. You become background, safe, invisible, disposable. But when you make your time scarce, your silence deliberate, and your attention selective, you activate the primitive part of others that equates rarity with value. Machiavelli understood that humans are wired to worship what withholds from them. That is why divinity is distant, kings are elevated, and leaders seldom linger. To descend too often into the crowd is to dissolve into it. At the core of Machiavellian respect lies self-containment, the refusal to leak emotion unnecessarily. Emotion, when exposed, becomes currency in the hands of others. Anger reveals what controls you. Desire exposes what can be used against you. Fear displays where you can be broken. Therefore, the Machiavellian disciplines his face, his tone, his pace. He learns that neutrality is not weakness, but camouflage. To appear unmoved while the world trembles is to command it. People project strength where they cannot find reaction. If you show nothing, they imagine everything. You may think this approach drains humanity, but Machiavelli's wisdom does not kill the soul. It fortifies it. He understood that sensitivity without discipline is suffering. To feel deeply and still remain composed is the highest form of power. It is not about denying emotion, but mastering its expression. In politics, the ruler who reacts loses. In life, the individual who overreacts is owned by his surroundings. The cold mind is not heartless, it is awake. Imagine two rulers faced with betrayal. One erupts in fury, demanding loyalty and confessing his wounds. The other simply smiles, acknowledges nothing, and quietly removes the traitor's access. Who commands greater fear, the one who yells or the one who punishes in silence? Machiavelli's answer is clear. The silent ruler writes his own legend. People forget rage, but they never forget composure in the face of chaos. It terrifies them because it implies knowledge, the knowledge of how, when, and where to strike. Power, in its purest form, is not action but anticipation. To foresee is to dominate, and to foresee, you must detach from emotion long enough to read human nature clearly. People repeat themselves endlessly. Their patterns are predictable once you observe without reacting. The envious will always disguise advice as criticism. The weak will always praise you before they betray you. The insecure will always test you before they trust you. Machiavelli urged rulers to treat human behavior as mathematics, not morality. Once you recognize the formula, you stop being surprised by betrayal. Surprise is the privilege of the naive. This is why the Machiavellian studies people, not to love or hate them, but to calculate them. Observation is his first weapon, memory is his second. He remembers details others overlook, the tone of hesitation, the flicker of envy, the misplaced compliment. Each is a data point. Over time, they form a map of predictable outcomes. When you see the map clearly, you no longer chase approval, you predict reactions. You begin to craft moves like a chess master, 3 steps ahead, always indifferent to flattery, always aware that praise is the first act of exploitation. At this level, your silence becomes intimidating. Your refusal to react creates confusion. People will start asking themselves what you know. That question is your shield. The more they speculate, the less they act. Doubt, properly used, paralyzes opponents more effectively than confrontation. Machiavelli knew that to destabilize an enemy, you do not need to strike them. You only need to make them doubt their safety. Fear is sustained not by violence, but by uncertainty. And the one who can sustain uncertainty indefinitely rules without ever lifting a sword. But even power must rest on foundations. Respect cannot endure if your actions contradict your image. Machiavelli insisted that appearances must be maintained, but never at the expense of credibility. To deceive effectively, one must always appear virtuous. People will forgive hypocrisy if the illusion serves their interests. The key is consistency. If you claim honor, act with visible integrity in public, even while maneuvering in private. Appear compassionate while executing ruthless decisions behind closed doors. People crave moral simplicity. Give them the story they want to believe, and they will protect your deception for you. Yet there is danger in perfection. Appear too flawless, and you inspire envy. Envy breeds sabotage. The Machiavellian avoids this trap by allowing small flaws to remain visible, a calculated imperfection that humanizes him. A single weakness, well placed, distracts others from greater strengths. It gives the illusion of accessibility while concealing the machinery of control. This principle is ancient. Even the most powerful must allow the illusion of vulnerability to sustain loyalty. Men love what they think they can fix and fear what they realize they cannot. The paradox of power is that it must be both seen and unseen. You must remind others of your influence, but never boast about it. Let them witness it through consequence, not words. When someone disrespects you, correction must arrive naturally, as though dictated by the laws of reality, not by personal vendetta. This is how rulers maintain legitimacy. When punishment feels impersonal, justice feels divine. Your strength must seem structural, inevitable, unemotional, like gravity. When people believe resistance is futile, obedience feels voluntary. Machiavelli warned that those who depend on love are always at risk of revolt. Love fluctuates with emotion. Respect endures through fear and recognition. But fear must be clean, not brutal, not humiliating, but intelligent. Humiliation breeds revenge. Control breeds obedience. The Machiavellian achieves this by setting standards that cannot be questioned. His competence is so evident that disagreement feels foolish. His decisions are precise, his timing impeccable. He does not compete, he dictates rhythm. This is the essence of dominance, to make others adapt to your tempo until they cannot remember their own. Power, once consolidated, must evolve. The ruler who stagnates loses mystique. Predictability kills fascination, and fascination is a silent form of control. Therefore, the Machiavellian reinvents himself periodically. He alters tone, changes routine, introduces unpredictability into his own character. This renewal keeps followers intrigued and adversaries cautious. In personal life, the same strategy applies. Reinvention disorients those who thought they had you figured out. When your behavior becomes unpredictable but coherent, you transform from person to myth, and myths are unassailable. In the age of transparency, many believe that authenticity is the new virtue. But Machiavelli would warn, authenticity without discretion is suicide. The modern world confuses exposure with power. It tells you to share, to confess, to bare your soul, and then uses your truth to control you. The Machiavellian reverses this trend. He shares selectively. Every revelation is a calculated offering, every confession a diversion. He speaks not to express but to influence perception. His authenticity is curated, a controlled flame that warms but never burns. And here lies the second transformation, the mastery of visibility. To stop being liked is the first step. To master how you are seen is the second. Most people drift through life hoping to be noticed. The Machiavellian engineers attention. He decides what others must see, when they must see it, and how they must feel about it. He is the director of his own mythos. He knows that visibility without narrative is vulnerability. Therefore, he shapes his silence into story, his restraint into legend. Even absence becomes presence when crafted with precision. In the coming evolution, you will see how this power becomes self-sustaining. Respect breeds influence. Influence breeds loyalty. Loyalty breeds protection. But protection is not granted freely. It is demanded by gravity. The world, sensing strength, orbits around it naturally. And those who once disrespected you begin to whisper your name differently, some in fear, some in admiration, all in acknowledgement. You are no longer liked, you are known. Betrayal is not an event, it is a measurement. It reveals the distance between what people said they valued and what they actually desired. The Machiavellian does not mourn betrayal, he studies it. Every act of disloyalty is a lesson in human mechanics. It shows you who fears loss and who fears insignificance, who worships power and who only pretends to. Machiavelli understood that men are faithful until the moment faith costs them more than treachery. Therefore, loyalty is not a virtue. It is a calculation, and once you understand that, betrayal loses its sting. It becomes confirmation that your assessment of human nature was correct. To the sentimental, betrayal feels personal. To the strategist, it is data. When someone betrays you, they have simply revealed that the balance of benefit shifted. The Machiavellian mind sees this shift before it happens. He observes restlessness in tone, impatience in eyes, subtle changes in rhythm. He reads hesitation the way others read handwriting, and when he senses that loyalty is thinning, he does not plead. He pivots. He reconfigures alliances quietly, ensuring that by the time disloyalty matures into action, it has nowhere left to land. This is the elegance of anticipation. To wait for betrayal is weakness. To preempt it is power. Machiavelli warned rulers never to rely on gratitude. Gratitude, he said, is written in invisible ink. It fades with sunlight. People remember favors only until they need another. But they remember consequences indefinitely. The ruler who tries to buy loyalty with kindness is planting seeds in sand. Those who build it on fear of loss anchor it in stone. This does not mean cruelty. It means clarity. Make it more costly to betray you than to serve you. Make them weigh your absence like a deficit they cannot afford. That is the mathematics of influence. When betrayal does arrive, as it inevitably will, the Machiavellian reacts with precision, not emotion. The naive explode, the wise erase. Retaliation is not about vengeance. It is about calibration. The punishment must be neither excessive nor delayed. Excess reveals insecurity. Delay invites contagion. Machiavelli advised that injuries must be inflicted all at once, swiftly and conclusively, so that no wound remains open long enough to fester into rebellion. Mercy, when granted, must come later, in small, deliberate doses. That is how control is reasserted, through balance, not brutality. Imagine a ruler betrayed by his closest advisor. A sentimental man would lament the loss, question his judgment, and search for emotional closure. A Machiavellian would see only an opportunity. The advisor's betrayal provides proof of vigilance, a public example to deter others. The ruler would remove the traitor in silence, perhaps even elevate another in his place the very same day. The message would be clear. Betrayal does not weaken the throne, it strengthens its foundations. Every act of treachery becomes a reminder of consequence. That is how fear becomes functional, not through terror, but through inevitability. In your own life, betrayal can serve the same function. Each act of disrespect reveals a boundary you failed to enforce. Each disappointment highlights where sentiment overrode reason. The Machiavellian adjusts. He does not cry over manipulation. He refines his filters. He replaces reactive emotion with active discernment. He learns who deserves access, not by words, but by observation under pressure. Time and silence test people better than trust ever could. Trust is an investment. Observation is insurance. The wise do not chase explanations from those who wrong them. They already understand. Explanation is a tool of manipulation. It's how the guilty reframe their betrayal as misunderstanding. The Machiavellian never debates intentions. He judges results. Words are smoke. Outcomes are stone. Once someone breaks alignment with your interests, there is nothing left to discuss. Remove access, not affection. Indifference is the purest revenge because it deprives the betrayer of significance. Machiavelli taught that contempt kills faster than the sword. Still, even contempt must be strategic. Never display anger publicly. Outrage is confession. It tells the world that someone has touched your inner balance. The Machiavellian does not allow that. His vengeance, when necessary, is silent and administrative. He does not shout, he shifts. The person who wronged him simply begins to notice doors closing, opportunities vanishing, names that once supported them turning away. The Machiavellian ruler's hand is invisible. People punish themselves by walking into the consequences of their own actions. That is the highest mastery. To make correction look like coincidence. To endure betrayal without bitterness requires one thing: detachment. Machiavelli's detachment was not apathy, but perspective. He viewed the world through systems, not sentiment. Every human action, he wrote, is driven by need, the need to survive, to control, to be seen. When you see betrayal through that lens, it ceases to feel like an attack. It becomes predictable, like gravity. You stop personalizing it, and in doing so, you stop being broken by it. This composure terrifies others because it signals something unshakable, the ability to lose without collapsing. Most people fear betrayal because they equate it with failure, but to the Machiavellian, betrayal is feedback. It shows that you are playing the right game, that your power was real enough to provoke envy. Weak men are not betrayed, they are ignored. The presence of treachery means your influence has weight. Therefore, treat betrayal not as humiliation, but as a milestone. Each one refines your understanding of loyalty, your perception of weakness, your tolerance for illusion. Betrayal, repeated often enough, hardens insight into intuition. In the same vein, do not rush to expose traitors. Exposure is satisfying but short-lived. Secrecy is strategic. Sometimes, the most useful enemy is the one who still believes he is hidden. As long as he thinks you trust him, he will reveal himself further. Machiavelli advised rulers to let conspiracies unfold under observation, not confrontation. Interfere too soon, and you cut off information. Wait just long enough, and you can eliminate multiple threats with one calculated strike. In power, patience is the disguise of dominance. Betrayal also tests endurance, the discipline to maintain poise while the world tries to provoke reaction. The Machiavellian sees endurance as armor. He knows that emotion makes decisions heavy and outcomes sloppy. He practices cold analysis. Who benefits from this betrayal? What are the motives, the ripple effects, the replacements it enables? Emotion screams, "Why me?" Strategy asks, "What now?" The difference determines who controls the narrative. The ruler who reacts becomes spectacle. The ruler who calculates becomes history. To control betrayal, you must also control forgiveness. The naive forgive too soon. The vengeful never forgive at all. The Machiavellian forgives precisely when it serves him. Forgiveness is a currency of power, not morality. To forgive someone publicly can be more humiliating than to punish them. It reminds them of dependence. To forgive someone privately but withdraw your trust permanently is even sharper. It creates uncertainty. They walk in your presence with the ghost of their mistake haunting every gesture. That is Machiavellian mercy, a psychological prison disguised as pardon. Machiavelli's understanding of retaliation was rooted in timing. He wrote that vengeance, when delayed, multiplies. Not in anger, but in effect. When you wait to act, you accumulate information, allies leverage. When you strike, it is clean and final. There is no need for words. Consequence speaks louder. The ruler who reacts instantly satisfies emotion, but wastes strategy. The one who observes first and retaliates last builds a legacy of inevitability. People come to fear not your strength, but your patience. To master betrayal is to understand transience. Alliances shift, people evolve, interests collide. The Machiavellian adapts without apology. He does not cling to loyalty that has expired, nor does he mourn connections that dissolve. He sheds people as a serpent sheds skin, not out of cruelty but growth. He knows that attachment is useful only while it enhances power. When it begins to drain it, release becomes wisdom. The sentimental call this coldness, the strategist calls it evolution. Yet even Machiavelli knew that pure isolation is fatal. The prince who trusts no one becomes paranoid, and paranoia consumes itself. The art is balance, to trust slowly, test constantly, and detach instantly when necessary. Keep allies close enough to function, but never close enough to see your pulse. Share power like light through a narrow window, enough to keep others warm, never enough to let them see clearly. Darkness is not your enemy, it is your privacy. In modern life, this translates to emotional discretion. Never give anyone full access to your inner world. Not friends, not partners, not family. Keep a part of yourself unshareable. That is the sanctuary where strength regenerates. When people believe they fully know you, they stop respecting you. Familiarity turns admiration into fatigue. Leave a question mark in every interaction. Let them wonder what you are thinking, what you are planning, what you are capable of. Respect thrives in uncertainty. The unknown is more powerful than the known. As you refine this mindset, something profound happens. You stop reacting to betrayal altogether. You become observational, detached, eerily calm. People expect outrage and find silence. They expect confrontation and receive indifference. That contrast unsettles them. They begin to see you differently, not as human drama, but as principle, as system, as inevitability. You become less a participant in emotion and more a force within it. And when people sense they cannot emotionally destabilize you, they stop trying. This transformation marks your ascent into psychological sovereignty. You no longer depend on external validation, nor do you fear external disruption. Betrayal ceases to exist as wound. It becomes ritual, the price of leadership, the tax of clarity. Each time it happens, your tolerance grows colder, cleaner, sharper. You see the world through Machiavelli's lens, not as good or evil, but as motion, every action serving power or weakening it. The moral man asks, is this right? The Machiavellian asks, does this serve? That single shift separates followers from architects. There is beauty in this philosophy if you can stomach its realism. It does not teach cruelty for its own sake, but awareness without anesthesia. It strips illusion and leaves you standing in reality's hard light. But in that light, you see everything. You begin to anticipate betrayal like weather, to read ambition like a language. You stop fearing storms because you have become one. And those who once saw your calm as weakness will now recognize it for what it is, the silence before precision. The third transformation begins here. Betrayal ceases to be about others. It becomes your crucible. Each disloyalty refines you, forging instinct into wisdom. The next time it happens, you will not shrink. You will calculate. You will let the betrayer walk into the trap of their own impatience, smiling quietly as they mistake your stillness for ignorance. Machiavelli would approve, the calm man always wins, because chaos exhausts itself faster than composure. Power, once achieved, is not to be displayed, it is to be preserved. Machiavelli understood that visible strength invites challenge, while silent strength commands obedience. The true ruler does not shout his dominance, he engineers it. His influence seeps through the system like an unseen current, felt everywhere, questioned nowhere. Those who rely on intimidation eventually become slaves to it, forced to prove it endlessly. But those who master perception never need to prove anything. They have moved beyond the theater of validation and entered the domain of inevitability. To remain powerful, you must master restraint. Invisibility is not absence, it is precision. The most dangerous force in any environment is the one that cannot be fully traced. Machiavelli wrote that the appearance of virtue was more useful than virtue itself, because men judge more with their eyes than with their hearts. To be seen as virtuous, calm, decisive, these are the pillars of enduring respect. But the key lies in appearing, not declaring. The moment you explain your principles, you lower them to the level of negotiation. True principles do not justify themselves, they simply operate. Perception is architecture. It must be designed intentionally, brick by brick, through controlled consistency. Never let others see you deviate under pressure. When the world expects you to bend, stand. When they expect emotion, remain measured. When they seek access, give mystery. People are drawn not to kindness, but to composure. They sense in restraint something they lack, control. And what people envy, they respect. What they understand, they diminish. Therefore, the Machiavellian ensures he is never fully understood. The mature strategist does not compete for attention, he engineers context. He knows that every environment has its own language of dominance. In business, it is silence and certainty. In relationships, it is selective absence. In politics, it is the ability to reward and destroy without emotion. Each arena demands its own costume. Machiavelli's genius lay in understanding that power adapts. It wears whatever mask the audience requires while never forgetting the face beneath. The fool becomes his role. The ruler performs it. You must learn to see perception as warfare. Every word, gesture, and pause is a weapon. To control a narrative, you do not need to speak. You only need to anticipate what others will say next. Create their expectations, and you create their behavior. The one who defines perception defines reality. This is why Machiavelli valued the illusion of morality. If people believe you to be good, they will rationalize your actions as justified, even when ruthless. Reputation, once secured, is a license. It permits what would otherwise be condemned. The intelligent ruler guards it more fiercely than gold. At the height of mastery, power no longer seeks to dominate through fear alone. Fear is the foundation, but subtlety is the ceiling. Fear establishes respect. Elegance sustains it. Machiavelli knew that cruelty without sophistication turns respect into resentment. Thus, he taught the ruler to blend sharpness with grace, a balance that makes obedience feel voluntary. When you make others believe your dominance benefits them, they defend your rule as if it were their own idea. The highest power does not suppress rebellion. It prevents it by aligning self-interest with obedience. There is a moment in every ruler's ascent when direct control becomes inefficient. When power matures, it must decentralize without dissolving. The Machiavellian achieves this by embedding his influence into culture, habits, and expectations, systems that outlive his presence. He shapes the environment so thoroughly that even his absence enforces his will. The strongest fortress, Machiavelli wrote, is not one made of stone, but of loyalty and necessity. When the people depend on your system to survive, they protect it instinctively. In this way, your control becomes structural, invisible, permanent. To reach this level, you must first dismantle the need to be seen. Visibility is seductive but corrosive. The more you expose, the more you invite resistance. The more you explain, the less you are believed. A ruler who speaks too often becomes predictable. The Machiavellian understands the paradox. Influence grows in silence. It expands through absence, through the whispers of others, through the uncertainty of those who cannot tell if you are near or far, watching or indifferent. When they fear your silence more than your words, you have arrived at true command. The cold mind governs the hot world. People burn with impulse. They seek validation, vengeance, approval. They mistake reaction for strength. But every time you react, you confess weakness. You reveal what moves you. Machiavelli's ruler does not react. He redirects. He converts aggression into opportunity, criticism into camouflage, chaos into clarity. He is never emotional, only strategic. He allows others to expose themselves first, to reveal their vanity and impatience. Then he moves, not quickly but precisely, and when he moves, it feels inevitable, because the groundwork was laid long before the strike. To master restraint, you must first master ego. Ego is the loudest saboteur of power. It demands recognition and ruins mystique. The Machiavellian does not suppress ego. He disciplines it. He feeds it in private, never in public. Let others boast. Their vanity is your camouflage. While they advertise their achievements, you accumulate real leverage. In a world obsessed with noise, silence becomes luxury. Reserve your presence as a scarce commodity, and the world will pay attention the few times you reveal it. Respect must also evolve into something deeper, inevitability. The ruler who is merely respected is replaceable. The ruler who is perceived as essential cannot be removed. To become essential, tie your value to survival. Make your existence the framework through which others function, whether through competence, access, or reputation. Become the mechanism that others depend on. Then even those who dislike you will protect you, because your fall would threaten their own stability. This is the true Machiavellian immortality, to be needed by those who resent you. The modern world misunderstands power. It believes that transparency, vulnerability, and popularity produce strength, but Machiavelli knew the opposite. The more transparent you are, the easier you are to manipulate. The more vulnerable you appear, the faster you are consumed. And the more popular you become, the sooner they turn on you. Popularity is applause before crucifixion. Respect, by contrast, is silent endurance. It does not crave attention. It commands space. The man who needs to be liked bends. The man who needs only to be respected builds empires quietly. Restraint is not suppression. It is direction. The Machiavellian does not extinguish passion. He converts it into precision. Every emotion becomes a weapon once refined. Anger becomes strategy. Desire becomes ambition. Fear becomes foresight. Weak men indulge emotion. Strong men sculpt it. The greatest rulers in history, from Augustus to Bismarck, understood this alchemy. They did not deny feeling. They disciplined it into policy. Emotion, once mastered, becomes prophecy. It tells you how others will behave before they themselves understand it. This control extends to how you treat victory. Most fail not in defeat, but in triumph. The moment of victory is the most dangerous, because success seduces you into exposure. Machiavelli warned that fortune is a woman who abandons the careless. After conquest, the wise man retreats, not out of fear, but preservation. He lets others celebrate while he consolidates. He rewards allies just enough to keep them loyal, yet never enough to make them independent. He allows rivals to breathe, but never to recover. In his silence, he plans the next move before they realize the game has changed. At the highest level, the Machiavellian transforms control into legacy. Legacy is not reputation. It is influence that persists without presence. It is the echo of your decisions long after you are gone. To build it, you must act with the discipline of inevitability. Each move calculated not for today, but for permanence. Each alliance designed to outlast emotion. Each silence placed where noise would dilute meaning. The result is a power so refined it no longer needs you. It behaves like a law of nature. And yet, even as you ascend this structure of influence, you must never forget one principle: all power decays. Machiavelli was not a romantic. He knew that every empire, every legacy, every ruler faces entropy. But the wise one engineers his fall before it arrives. He creates successors who owe him everything, institutions that mirror his image, myths that preserve his story. He exits before he is removed, so that even absence feels like authorship. The world moves on, but his fingerprints remain on the machinery of its motion. The final discipline is disappearance. To vanish at the height of command is to become legend. When others expect more, you give silence. When they demand your presence, you leave them your influence instead. The void you leave becomes sacred, filled with interpretation, debate, myth. They will argue about your intentions, your morality, your genius, and in doing so, they will immortalize you. Machiavelli understood that legacy does not come from staying visible, but from vanishing deliberately, leaving the mind of men haunted by your precision. So stop being liked. Stop performing virtue for those who fear it. The world does not reward goodness. It rewards structure. Build yourself into a structure. Become so disciplined, so unreactive, so composed that others depend on your steadiness to navigate their own chaos. When you reach this point, you will no longer chase respect. It will orbit you. You will no longer command attention. It will follow you, and you will finally understand the Machiavellian truth. To be feared or loved is irrelevant. To be inevitable is divine. You now stand at the threshold, Machiavelli reserved for the few, those who can wield power without losing themselves in it. Let others chase applause, validation, followers, and noise. You will build silence, precision, and consequence. Let them love you when it is safe. Let them fear you when it is useful, but let them never touch your equilibrium. The day nothing can move you, not praise, not hatred, not betrayal, is the day you transcend them all. That is where the game ends and the legend begins. So now ask yourself, are you still trying to be liked, or are you ready to be respected? Write in the comments, I choose respect. Subscribe, stay silent, and remember, power does not shout, it endures.